Ready to dive into the world of persuasion.
Let's do it.
I'm so fascinated by this topic.
Me too. It's everywhere, isn't it?
It really is. In this deep dive, we're going to be breaking down the hows and whys of persuasion, how it works, the science behind it, the real nitty-gritty.
The stuff that makes us tick.
Yeah. And most importantly, we'll be looking at how anyone can use these techniques, ethically of course, to become more persuasive.
Because who doesn't want to get their point across?
Exactly. We've got a ton of great research articles to go through today.
Some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, from practical tips to some seriously deep psychological theories.
I love the range.
Me too. It reminds me of, you know what? Reminds me of back in high school. I was in the musical, George M.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had this part where I was supposed to be this, amazing dancer twirling my partner across the stage. And, well, the truth is, I was totally faking it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. My partner was incredible, like a total powerhouse,
Yeah.
and just made me look good.
So it was all smoke and mirrors.
Totally. But hey, it works, right?
Well, that's a perfect example of how persuasion often works.
Oh, how so?
It's not always about brute force,
Right.
It's about understanding those subtle levers of influence, working smarter, not harder.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And speaking of levers, one of the first things that popped out from the research was this idea of the communication cascade.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know, like a mental waterfall or something.
A cascade, exactly.
Yes. So how does this cascade work?
Well, the communication cascade basically shows us that persuasion, it's not about just hitting someone with a single message and boom, they're instantly persuaded. It's more of a process.
A journey.
Exactly. It's got stages, right?
Yeah.
First, you've got reception.
Caption.
Yeah, like getting your message in front of the right people at the right time.
So it's have timing and placement.
Yes. Think about it like, I don't know, you're putting up an ad.
Oh.
You wouldn't just put it anywhere, right?
Okay.
Right. You'd choose a specific spot, a specific time to reach your target audience. Or like knowing the best moment to say, ask your boss for a raise.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So once a message is received, what's next? Does it just magically sink in?
Not quite. The next stage is all about processing. What's happening inside the receiver's mind.
Okay.
Sometimes they're in high watt mode, carefully analyzing everything.
Oh, thank you.
Right, but other times it's more low watt, relying on gut feelings and mental shortcuts.
So the difference between, say, really dissecting a political debate versus being swayed by a catchy jingle.
Exactly, you're not always in deep thinking mode.
Absolutely not.
Then comes the response.
Response.
Yeah, the internal shift in their beliefs, attitudes, their intentions.
I see.
But the real holy grail of persuasion, the ultimate goal, is behavior change.
Getting them to actually do something different.
That's it. But to get to that behavior change, you've got to be specific about what you want, right?
Right. One of the articles you sent talked about this TCT framework. Target, action, context, and time.
TAPIT, yes.
So important.
Instead of just generally wanting people to exercise more.
Right. Be specific.
Exactly. You might target, say, adults over 50.
Okay.
The action being walking for 20 minutes, the context being most days of the week, and the time, well, daily, right?
Daily, got
That
it.
TACIT framework really helps to clarify your goals. It's like a roadmap.
Instead of just wandering around hoping you bump into your destination.
Exactly. But how do we even get people to want to take that journey in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. And that's where the power of why comes in.
Ooh, I like that.
Humans are naturally curious.
We want answers.
Right. We crave explanations. We need to know why things happen.
The why is everything.
And that's where attribution theory comes in.
Attribution theory. Fill me in.
It looks at how we explain the causes of events, behaviors, all that.
Give me an example.
Sure. Let's say you totally aced a presentation at work.
Okay.
You might attribute that success to, say, your hard work and preparation.
Internal fact.
Right. Or you might get all cocky and think, hey, I'm just naturally brilliant.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's me.
Internal attribution gone wild.
Totally. But you could also chalk it up to external factors, like your team support or even just luck.
And here's the fascinating part. By influencing how people attribute causes, you can actually influence their behavior.
Wait, really?
Yeah. There was this study where they told a group of kids, you're a neat and tidy person.
Okay.
And guess what? Those kids started picking up after themselves more often.
This is from being told that. Wow.
It's powerful stuff. Think about how you frame feedback,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
like using you statements, like you're a natural at
You
this.
really persevered through that challenge,
Exactly. That can really boost someone's self-belief.
like planting the seeds of success.
Exactly. And there's research that suggests this can even influence complex things like math achievement, even self-esteem.
So our words can shape not just actions, but even how people see their own abilities.
That's the power of attribution. But, we were talking about high watt and low watt processing earlier.
Right, different thinking modes.
So does attribution theory work differently depending on someone's mental state?
That's a great question. I'm curious too.
Well, when people are in that low watt mode, they tend to rely more on cues to guide their decisions.
Hughes.
We call them the CLARCCS cues.
Claire CCS. What's that stand for?
Comparison, liking, authority, reciprocity, commitment consistency, and scarcity.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
I know, right? But it's like a cheat sheet for the brain, all those little shortcuts we take when we're not in deep thinking mode.
Claire CCS. I like it. Give me an example.
Sure, let's take comparison. Seeing other people doing something makes us more likely to do it too. Like, ever notice how a long line outside a restaurant can suddenly make it seem more appealing?
Oh, all the time. It's like our brains are saying, hey, all those people can't be wrong. Maybe it's worth checking out.
Exactly. Or how about, buying the same brand of sneakers as your favorite athlete?
Oh, yeah, the liking cue in full force.
Right. We're more likely to be persuaded by people we like. That's why celebrity endorsements and influencer marketing are so effective.
It's all about tapping into that liking principle.
Exactly. Then there's authority. We tend to trust and obey authority figures like doctors or someone in uniform.
Even if we don't fully understand the reasoning.
It's that authority cue at work. It's like that old Milgram experiment.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Uh,
Where people were willing to administer electric shocks just because some guy in a lab coat told them to.
Exactly. Authority can be incredibly powerful,
A little scary, too.
for sure. Then there's reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
That feeling of obligation to give back when we receive something.
Ah, I see.
Free samples, holiday gifts, those all trigger that sense of reciprocity. And then we've got commitment and consistency.
Okay, explain that one.
Sure, it's the idea that once we've taken a stand or made a commitment, even a small one, we're more likely to act in ways that are consistent with that initial commitment.
So like that classic study where people who signed a petition against littering were less likely to litter themselves later on.
Exactly. Even though it was just signing a piece of paper, that public commitment made a difference.
It's like we're trying to maintain a consistent narrative about ourselves.
Exactly. And finally, there's scarcity.
Scarcity.
We tend to value things that are rare or in limited supply.
Ah, yes, the fear of missing out.
Limited time offers and auctions, they all play on that fear,
It's like Black Friday. Suddenly everyone needs that discounted TV.
even if they didn't even want it a week ago.
Exactly. Scarcity creates a sense of urgency.
It does. But with all these cues swirling around us, how do we know when we're being genuinely persuaded versus manipulated?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. How do we stay grounded?
Well, that's where critical thinking comes in.
Ah, yes, our best defense.
Being aware of these cues is the first step. It's like having a mental radar for persuasive tactics.
I like that analogy.
But there's one more technique I want to touch on before we move on. The two-step.
The two-step. Okay, I'm intrigued. Teach me how to dance. Okay, so teach me the steps to this two-step.
Well, the two-step is all about, setting the stage for compliance.
Sag the stage.
Yeah, like a two-part play, right?
Okay.
First, you make a request, but it's one that you know is likely to be rejected.
So you're intentionally aiming for a no.
Exactly. It's called the door-in-the-face technique.
Or in the face.
Yeah. That initial rejection, it makes the second request, the one you really want, seem much more reasonable by comparison.
It's like asking your parents for $1,000, knowing they'll say no, and then being like, okay, how about 100?
Exactly. Suddenly $100 doesn't seem so bad.
Right. It plays on our desire to compromise, I guess.
It does. We don't like conflict, so we're more willing to meet in the middle.
Makes sense. Is there another type of two-step?
There is. It's called the foot in the door technique.
Foot in the door.
Instead of starting big and scaling back, you start small.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, you make a small, easy to agree to request first.
Like a little baby step.
Exactly. And once they've said yes to that, they're way more likely to agree to a bigger request later on.
It's like getting your foot in the door, so to speak.
Precisely. It's all about building momentum. That initial yes creates the sense of commitment.
Which makes it harder to say no later.
Right. Like, have you ever noticed how, say, salespeople will often get you to agree to something small first? Like, trying a sample or taking a
Oh,
brochure.
yeah, all the time.
That's foot in the door in action. They're getting you to commit, even in a small way,
Sneaky.
but effective. There's a fascinating study they did in a bar.
Oh, tell me about it.
They had patrons sign a petition against drunk driving.
Okay.
And later on, when those same patrons got intoxicated, they were significantly more likely to accept a taxi ride home.
So by getting them to publicly commit to responsible behavior earlier.
Exactly. It made them more likely to follow through later, even when they were under the influence.
That's pretty amazing, actually.
It is. It shows the power of consistency.
We want to be true to our word, I guess.
Right. We like to think of ourselves as rational, predictable people.
Even if we're not always.
Haha, exactly. But, all this talk of compliance and techniques, it makes me think about, well, the ethics of persuasion.
Yeah, that's your point.
Where do we draw the line between influence and manipulation?
Right. Because some of these techniques, they can be pretty powerful.
They can, and that's why it's so important to use them responsibly.
Use your powers for good.
Exactly. Now, speaking of powerful psychological forces, have you ever heard of cognitive dissonance?
Cognitive dissonance. Yeah, I've heard the term.
It's one of the most fascinating quirks of human psychology.
Oh, tell me more.
It's basically this mental discomfort we experience when our beliefs or our actions contradict each other.
So like that feeling you get when you know you should be doing one thing.
But you find yourself doing the opposite.
Exactly. Like when you know you should be eating healthy, but you reach for the cookies anyway.
That's a perfect example. Our brains hate inconsistency. We're constantly trying to maintain this sense of internal harmony, even if it means twisting the facts a bit.
So we're basically masters of self-deception.
In a way, yes. And one of the most classic examples of this is something called the insufficient justification effect.
Insufficient justification.
Oh.
Okay, now I'm really curious.
So get this. Research has shown that the less people are paid to do something they dislike, the more likely they are to convince themselves they actually enjoyed it.
Wait, what? Explain that again.
Okay, so let's say you have to do this really boring task, right?
Sure.
And afterwards, you're asked to lie about how much you enjoyed it. Now, here's the thing. If you're only paid a small amount to lie, like $1, you're more likely to actually believe that you enjoyed the task.
But why? That makes no sense.
It's all about reducing that cognitive dissonance. If you were only paid $1 to lie, your brain goes, well, I wouldn't lie for just $1, so I must have actually kind of liked it.
So our brains are just making stuff up to make us feel better.
Pretty much. It's a way of justifying our actions to ourselves.
Wow, our brains are sneaky.
They are. And there's another example. Think about when you've had to make a really tough decision, like which car to buy or which job to take.
Oh yeah, those are tough.
Once you make the choice, you often start focusing on the positive aspects of the option you chose and kind of downplaying the ones you didn't pick.
Oh, totally. It's like you're trying to convince yourself you made the right decision.
Exactly. It's called post-decision dissonance, and it helps us feel better about our choices.
So it's all about reducing that mental discomfort.
That's it. Dissonance reduction is a powerful force.
So can we use this dissonance thing for persuasion? Like intentionally create dissonance to get people to change their minds?
It's possible, but it's tricky.
How so?
You have to create a situation where the person feels compelled to act in a way that contradicts their existing beliefs, but without being manipulative or coercive.
Sounds like a delicate balance.
It is. Ethically speaking, persuasion should always be about empowering others, not forcing them into anything.
Right. Guiding, not forcing.
Exactly. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about inoculation theory.
Inoculation theory. Sounds intriguing.
It's like giving someone a psychological vaccine.
A vaccine? Against what?
Against persuasion attempts, or at least against changing their minds too easily.
So how does that work?
Well, you basically warn them about potential attacks on their beliefs.
Like a heads up.
Exactly. And then you present a weakened version of those counter-arguments so they can practice defending their position.
It's like giving them a sneak peek at the opposing side's playbook.
Precisely. So when they encounter those arguments in the real world, they're better prepared to counter them.
Interesting. Any real-world examples of this?
One of the most famous examples is how President Bill Clinton preemptively addressed Jennifer Flowers' allegations.
Oh, right. I remember that.
He went on TV and basically acknowledged the rumors but presented his side of the story. It helped to lessen the impact of Flowers' press conference the next day.
So by getting ahead of the story and presenting a weakened version of the accusations?
He inoculated the public against the full force of the allegations.
Wow, that's pretty clever.
It is. It's a powerful technique, especially when you're dealing with potentially damaging information.
Like a PR shield.
Exactly. But, with all this talk of techniques and theories, it's
Mhm.
important to remember that this is all based on research and
Right?
evidence.
It's not just a bunch of made-up tricks.
Exactly. There's a whole field of study dedicated to understanding persuasion and influence.
So it's about using a scientific lens to
Mhm.
figure out what works.
And what doesn't. We need
Yeah.
to go beyond anecdotes and gut feelings.
We need data.
We do. But, even with all this evidence, I think it's natural to feel a little uneasy about using these techniques.
Yeah, I get that. It's like, where do we draw the line?
Exactly. When does persuasion become manipulation?
Right. How do we make sure we're using these powers for good?
Well, I think it all comes down to intention and respect.
Intention and respect.
Yeah. Are you trying to genuinely help someone see things from a different perspective, or are you trying to trick them into doing something they don't really want to do?
That's the key difference.
It is. And ultimately, ethical persuasion is about empowering others, not controlling them.
Well said. But I have to admit, even knowing all this, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all the persuasive messages we're bombarded with every day.
I hear you. We live in a very persuasive world.
It's everywhere. Ads, social media, politicians, you name it.
So how do we protect ourselves? How do we stay true to our own values and beliefs?
That's the million-dollar question.
The key is critical thinking.
Ah, there it is again.
We need to learn how to analyze those persuasive messages, spot the biases, and evaluate the credibility of the source.
So it's about becoming more aware, more discerning.
Exactly. Don't just passively absorb everything you see and hear. Ask questions. Be skeptical.
Like a mental detective.
Yes. The more you practice, the better you'll get at spotting those subtle tactics.
It's about taking back control.
Exactly. But this is just scratching the surface.
Oh, there's more.
There's always more to learn. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll get into some more specific strategies you can use in your everyday life, both personally and professionally.
Oh, I can't wait. This is getting good.
So stay tuned. We've got a lot more ground to cover.
Welcome back for the final part of our persuasion deep dive.
I'm ready to wrap things up.
Me too. But before we do, with all this talk about persuasive techniques,
Yeah,
it really makes you think about the ethical side of things.
it does.
It's like, where's the line between, influence?
Manipulation.
Exactly. Because some of these techniques, they can be pretty powerful, right?
Oh, for sure. Persuasion, when it's used ethically, can be a force for good.
It can help us build relationships, achieve goals, even change the world, maybe.
Absolutely.
But then there's the flip side.
The potential for misuse.
Exactly. It's like this double-edged sword,
It is. Think about it. Persuasion is everywhere. It's woven into every aspect of our lives.
It really is.
Advertisers, politicians, heck, even our friends and family, they all use persuasion to influence us in some way.
So how do we navigate this persuasive landscape without, I don't know, becoming cynical or jaded?
That's the challenge, isn't it? I think it comes down to a few key principles, like transparency,
Transparency, yeah.
authenticity, and respect.
Okay, so transparency seems pretty straightforward. It's about being upfront about your intentions, right?
Exactly. No hidden agendas, no misleading people. Be honest about what you're trying to achieve.
No sneaky tactics.
Nope. Then there's authenticity. That means being genuine in your communication.
So don't try to be someone you're not.
Right. Or pretend to believe something you don't. People can usually sense when someone's being fake.
Absolutely.
And finally, respect. That means valuing the other person's perspective, even if you disagree with them.
Listening to their concerns.
Exactly. It's about treating them as an equal partner in the conversation, not just trying to bulldoze your ideas through.
Respect is key in any relationship, really.
It is, and especially in a persuasive one.
It's interesting, how these ethical principles, they actually overlap with the principles of good communication in general.
That's true.
It's not just about persuasion, it's about how we treat each other on a fundamental level.
Exactly. Ethical persuasion, it's not about tricks or manipulation.
Right.
It's about building trust, understanding different perspectives, and finding common ground
It's about empowering people,
to make their own informed decisions.
not coercing them into doing what we want.
Exactly. But, even armed with this knowledge, it's still easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of persuasive messages we encounter every single day.
It's a constant bombardment.
It is. So how do we protect ourselves? How do we stay grounded in our own values?
That's what I want to know.
Well, it all comes back to critical thinking.
Our trusty friend.
We need to sharpen our ability to analyze those messages, identify the biases, and evaluate the credibility of the source.
So we need to become savvy consumers of information.
Exactly. Don't just passively absorb everything. Question everything. Be skeptical.
Like a mental detective.
Yes. Always be on the lookout for those subtle tactics and strategies.
It's about taking back control of our own minds.
Exactly. Well, I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
It really has. We've explored the science, the techniques, the ethics of persuasion.
And the key takeaway, I think.
Yeah.
Persuasion is a powerful tool, but it's up to us to use it wisely and responsibly.
Couldn't agree more. So as we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with this. Think about a situation coming up where you want to persuade someone. It could be a presentation at work, asking for a raise, even convincing a friend to try that new restaurant you've been raving about. How can you use what we've discussed, these principles of ethical persuasion, to achieve your goal? It's about finding that balance between effectively getting your point across and respecting the other person's autonomy. Remember, the power of persuasion is in your hands, so use it wisely. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey into the world of persuasion.
It's been a pleasure.